The Ullian counselor's forearms slammed the table, rage contorting his blue face as he screamed, "The humans have seen through our cloaking technology on those ships, so we either destroy them, or they spread the truth about us across the galaxy and bring our rule to an end." "Calm yourself, Ilara," the insectoid Zorgax clicked, her mandibles twitching. "We have suppressed thousands of species. These humans will be no different." The 12 members of the Galactic Council argued in their grand chamber, a floating disk miles above the surface of the capital world. Holograms showed human soldiers gunning each other down in trenches and bombing cities to rubble. A few members felt disgust at the violence, but most felt only cold disdain. "Look at them, barely evolved primates," the Ullian snarled. "Killing each other with chemical projectile weapons. They are far too primitive to have pierced our stealth systems." "Yet one has," the Zorgax countered, antennae waving as she pulled up a new hologram. It showed a burly human male aiming an optical enhancement device at a shimmering patch in the sky. The recording zoomed in, showing a sleek alien craft hovering above an icy tundra, nearly invisible. Then a searing beam of plasma shot from the ship, vaporizing a mountaintop. The human male spoke into a communication device, his words translated by the Council's systems. "Christ, it's a goddamn UFO blowing up mountains. I don't know what the hell I just saw, but humanity needs to know. This is Daniel Cook, sending this out on all channels. We've got alien company, and they don't seem friendly." Ilara roared, two of his hands balling into fists. "One miserable human cannot be allowed to expose our presence. The invasion plans must be accelerated. We begin the invasion of Earth immediately." The rest of the Council looked at each other nervously, but no one dared contradict the Ullian in one of his rages. They all knew that the subjugation of Earth had to proceed swiftly now. If the human Daniel Cook transmitted his proof of the alien ship's existence out to the wider human population, it could galvanize the violent bipeds into global unification and opposition against the Council's forces. And if that knowledge spread further, reaching the thousands of species groaning under the Council's iron rule, it could spark a dozen bloody rebellions across the stars. Trillions of lives hung in the balance. "Prepare all ships for the assault," the Zorgax Empress clicked grimly. "The humans have mere days before our wrath descends upon them." Daniel's fingers shook as he stabbed at his sat phone, putting in the private number for Admiral John Simmons. The 55-year-old former SEAL picked up on the second ring. "Cook, this better be important," Simmons barked. "I'm in a meeting with the Joint Chiefs." "Sir, you need to see this," Daniel said, his voice unsteady. He quickly sent the video file of the cloaked ship vaporizing the mountain. I think it's aliens, sir, and they sure as hell ain't the friendly type." There was a long pause on the other end of the line. Daniel heard Simmons suck in a sharp breath. "I'll be damned. All right, Cook, good work. I'm pulling together a team now to analyze this. Sit tight and keep this under your hat, you hear?" "Yes, sir," Daniel replied as Simmons hung up. In the Pentagon, Admiral Simmons stormed into the office of Dr. Robert Michaels, the Department of Defense's top astrophysicist. The 45-year-old scientist looked up in surprise. "So you can take a look at this, Michaels," Simmons said gruffly, pulling up the video on a large wall monitor. "One of my men in the Arctic shot it. Tell me what the fuck we're looking at." Dr. Michaels watched the footage, his eyes widening behind his glasses. He ran a hand through his salt and pepper hair. "Jesus, based on the shimmer effect and how it's bending the light, I'd say that craft is using some sort of advanced cloaking technology way beyond anything we have. It's essentially invisible to the naked eye, and I'd bet most of our detection systems as well." Simmons' face was grim. "And I'm guessing whatever species can pull that off isn't here to make friends, judging by how they wiped that mountain off the map." Dr. Michaels shook his head. "No, sir, I think it's safe to say their intentions are hostile. We need to mobilize, and fast. There's no telling how many more of those ships could be out there watching us." "Agreed," Simmons said, pulling out his phone. "I'm putting all our forces on high alert. Get a team together, Michaels, best and brightest. We're going to need to play catch-up real quick if we want a fighting chance. Those ET bastards aren't going to know what hit them." As the humans scrambled to prepare, they had no idea that Ilara's invisible fleet was already spreading out across the globe. The alien ships glided silently over major cities worldwide, sensors scanning and transmitting reams of data back to the Galactic Council. They analyzed population densities, military bases, weapons facilities, and more. The cloaked craft swept across continents unseen, from the skyscrapers of New York to the favelas of Rio, from the bustle of Tokyo to the factories of Beijing. But while the alien ships themselves remained concealed, their effects did not. As they passed, their advanced propulsion systems left strange energy signatures in the atmosphere. Around the world, people by the thousands saw eerie lights streaking across the sky, pulsing orbs hovering over neighborhoods, or the northern lights appearing in the wrong hemisphere. Social media exploded, with shaky handheld videos of the supposed UFOs. The internet buzzed with rumors of an impending alien attack. In some cities, panicked mobs ran wild in the streets, looting stores and attacking anyone they suspected of being in league with the extraterrestrial invaders. Governments were quick to dismiss the sightings as weather balloons, mass hysteria, or hoaxes. But behind closed doors, world leaders fearfully watched the same videos that Admiral Simmons had received of a cloaked ship effortlessly destroying a mountain. They whispered to each other in urgent, encrypted communications, dreading what the next few days would bring. No one wanted to be the first to say it out loud, but they all knew the truth humanity had simultaneously longed for and feared. As chaos gripped the globe, Daniel found himself whisked away from his remote Alaskan outpost to the heart of American military power. A Black Hawk helicopter ferried him to the Pentagon, where he was ushered into a secure briefing room deep within the labyrinthine complex. Inside, he found himself face to face with some of the most powerful figures in the U.S. defense apparatus. Admiral Simmons was there, his weathered face set in a grim expression. Dr. Michaels stood nearby, nervously adjusting his glasses. The Joint Chiefs of Staff sat around the table, their uniforms crisp and their eyes hard. "Mr. Cook," Admiral Simmons began without preamble, "that footage you sent us has been analyzed by our top experts. It's the consensus that we are dealing with an extraterrestrial threat, one with technology far beyond our own. We need every scrap of intel we can get. Walk us through exactly what you saw out there." Daniel took a deep breath, the memories of that fateful day in the Arctic still fresh in his mind. He described in detail the shimmering distortion he had seen in the sky, the way it had seemed to bend the light around it. He recounted the beam of searing energy that had obliterated the mountaintop, and the chilling realization that humanity was not alone. "I think there may be a flaw in their cloaking technology," Daniel said, his voice steady despite the incredible nature of his claim. "The shimmer effect, the way it distorted the light, I believe their cloaking can't fully conceal them in the visible spectrum. It's subtle, but it's there." Dr. Michaels leaned forward, his eyes alight with sudden understanding. "Of course, the cloaking must operate on a different wavelength, maybe infrared or ultraviolet. But there's bleed over into the visible spectrum. It's not much, but it might be enough for us to detect them." Admiral Simmons nodded slowly. "Dr. Michaels, I want you and your team to start working on a detection system immediately, something that can spot these things even when they're cloaked. We need eyes on them yesterday." "We're already putting together a special task force," one of the generals added. "Code name is Project Phantom. Mr. Cook, Admiral Simmons, you'll be heading it up. You'll have our best soldiers, our most advanced tech. Your mission is to track these things, learn everything you can about them, and find a way to counter them. The fate of our world may very well rest on your shoulders." As the meeting concluded and the room emptied, Daniel felt the weight of that responsibility settling onto him. He had gone from a lone voice in the wilderness to a key player in humanity's desperate bid for survival. Project Phantom was humanity's sword and shield against the devourer darkness. Far above the Earth, aboard the Galactic Council's flagship, Ilara paced restlessly. Her forearms were clasped behind her back, her blue skin flushed with agitation. She had argued against this course of action from the beginning, but her warnings had fallen on deaf ears. Now, as she watched the invisible fleet spreading out across the human world like a malignant cancer, she felt a deep sense of unease. The humans were primitive, yes, but they were not fools. They would notice the signs, the aberrations. They would start to question. And a species with nothing to lose, backed into a corner, they were the most dangerous kind. Ilara feared that in their arrogance, the Council had sown the seeds of a bloody and catastrophic conflict, one that could spread like wildfire across the stars. She had to make them see reason, to convince them to pull back before it was too late. The humans deserved a chance, a choice, to be equals, not subjects. But she knew she faced an uphill battle against centuries of entrenched xenophobia and superiority. Still, she had to try, for the sake of her conscience and for the sake of peace, even if it meant defying the will of the Council itself. In the depths of a top-secret government facility, Dr. Michaels and his team of brilliant scientists worked tirelessly on the Ghostbuster detection system. They soldered circuits, calibrated sensors, and wrote complex algorithms, fueled by a potent mix of fear and determination. After weeks of grueling 18-hour days, Dr. Michaels burst into Admiral Simmons' office, his face flush with excitement. "We've done it, Admiral. The Ghostbuster is ready. It can detect those cloaked ships, pinpoint their exact locations." Admiral Simmons leapt to his feet. "Outstanding work, Doctor. We need to get this deployed immediately. I want those sensors in every major city, every military base, everywhere that matters. We have to know exactly what we're up against." Within hours, Daniel Cook was leading a covert team to install the Ghostbuster sensors worldwide. They worked swiftly and silently, scaling skyscrapers in New York, infiltrating the Kremlin in Moscow, even planting sensors deep in the Amazon rainforest. As the last sensor came online, the Ghostbuster system hummed to life. Screens lit up in the Pentagon's command center, each one showing a different part of the globe, and on each screen, hundreds of red dots pulsed ominously. Dr. Michaels nodded grimly. "It's worse than we thought, but at least now we can see them. We know what we're fighting." As the shocking extent of the alien presence became clear, world leaders were quickly brought into the fold. A global coalition formed, pooling resources and intelligence to confront the extraterrestrial threat. In secret facilities around the world, weapon systems unlike anything Earth had seen before took shape. Directed energy weapons capable of slicing through the alien ships' hulls. EMP devices designed to fry their advanced electronics. Kinetic projectiles that could punch through their shields at relativistic speeds. Humanity was preparing for war on a scale it had never imagined. And high above the Earth, the Galactic Council realized its invisible fleet had been exposed. In the Grand Chamber, the Council members erupted into furious debate. Some urged an immediate withdrawal, insisting that open conflict with the humans would be a costly mistake. Others demanded a preemptive strike, to wipe out the human coalition before it could mount an effective defense. Amidst the chaos, Ilara slipped away. She had to act to reach out to the humans before it was too late. Using a heavily encrypted communication channel, she contacted Daniel Cook. "Meet me at these coordinates," she transmitted, along with a set of geographic coordinates deep in the Alaskan wilderness. "Come alone, we must talk, before our worlds collide and burn." Daniel stared at the message, his heart racing. He knew it could be a trap, but he also knew it might be their only chance to avert a catastrophic war. As he prepared to embark on the most important mission of his life, Daniel couldn't shake the feeling that the fate of not just Earth, but the entire galaxy hung in the balance. In a remote corner of Alaska, a shimmering alien craft descended from the sky, settling onto the icy tundra. Daniel emerged from his snow-camouflaged jeep, his breath fogging in the frigid air. The ship's hatch hissed open, and Ilara stepped out. Her blue skin seemed to glow in the ethereal light of the aurora borealis dancing overhead. "Thank you for coming," she said, her voice soft but urgent. "We don't have much time. My people, the Galactic Council, they're not what you think." "So start talking," Daniel said, his hand resting on the pulse pistol at his hip. "Why are you here? What do you want with Earth?" Ilara took a deep breath, her forearms folding across her chest. "The Council, we've watched your species for a long time, seen you fight and kill each other over and over. We thought you were too primitive, too violent, to be allowed free rein in the galaxy." She paused, her eyes meeting Daniel's. "But some of us disagreed. We believe in you, in your potential. We think you deserve a chance to join the galactic community as equals." Daniel's grip tightened on his weapon. "And the others, the ones who want to wipe us out?" "They're afraid of you," Ilara said simply. "Afraid of what you might become if left unchecked. They see only your capacity for war, not your capacity for greatness." She stepped forward, her hands outstretched. "But we can change that. If your leaders agree to talk, to negotiate, we can find a path to peace, one that benefits both our peoples." Daniel hesitated, torn between hope and suspicion. He had seen firsthand the destruction the alien ships could unleash. Could he really trust this plea for diplomacy? But as he looked into Ilara's eyes, he saw something unexpected. Sincerity, desperation, and beneath it all, fear. Fear of what would happen if their peoples went to war. "I'll talk to my superiors," he said finally. "See if they're willing to come to the table. But I can't make any promises, and if your council makes a move against Earth, all bets are off." Ilara nodded solemnly. "I understand, but please hurry. Every moment we waste brings us closer to the brink." With that, she turned and strode back into her ship. As it lifted off, vanishing into the star-strewn sky, Daniel was left alone in the frozen wilderness, the weight of worlds on his shoulders. Daniel stormed into the secure briefing room deep within the Pentagon, his heart pounding. Admiral Simmons and the other Project Phantom leaders turned to face him, their expressions guarded. "Sir, we need to talk," Daniel said, his voice steady despite the adrenaline surging through his veins. "I just met with Ilara, one of the aliens. She wants to negotiate a peaceful resolution." Admiral Simmons's eyes narrowed. "And you believed her? For all we know, this could be a ploy to gather intel on our capabilities." Daniel shook his head. "I don't think so, sir. She seemed sincere, desperate even. I think we should at least hear her out." The room erupted into heated debate, with some arguing for diplomacy, while others insisted on a hardline stance. Daniel stood his ground, making the case for peace. Finally, Admiral Simmons held up a hand, silencing the room. "All right, Cook. We'll let you pursue this for now, but we're not letting our guard down. The Coalition will continue preparing for war." Daniel nodded, relief washing over him. "Understood, sir. I'll make contact with Ilara immediately." As Daniel worked to establish a secure line of communication with the Galactic Council, trouble was brewing in the depths of space. Aboard the Zorgon warship, Karax slammed a clawed fist onto the console. "The humans have grown too bold," he snarled, his insectoid features contorted with rage. "They dare to challenge our authority." His allies, a cadre of hawkish council members, chittered in agreement. "We must strike now," one hissed, "crush them before they can mount a defense." Karax's mandibles twitched in a vicious smile. "Prepare the fleet. We attack at once." On Earth, the first sign of the assault was a series of blinding flashes in the sky. Then the screams began as searing beams of energy sliced through skyscrapers, reducing them to molten rubble. Invisible ships rained down destruction on cities worldwide. New York, London, Beijing, Moscow. Millions perished in an instant, the alien weapons cutting through flesh and bone like a scythe through wheat. Panic gripped the globe as governments scrambled to respond. The human coalition's newly developed anti-alien weapons roared to life, ground-based lasers and high-velocity railguns seeking out the cloaked ships. The Ghostbuster sensors lit up as they detected the alien fleet, relaying targeting data to the human weapons. One by one, the invisible ships winked out of existence as they were hit, exploding into brilliant fireballs. Faced with the unexpected resistance, the Zorgon faction was forced to pull back, their numbers thinned. But the damage was done. Earth cities lay in ruins, the death toll staggering. In the Pentagon, Daniel watched the carnage unfold on the screens, his heart heavy. He had fought so hard for peace only to see it shattered in an instant. Admiral Simmons gripped his shoulder. "We're at war now, son. There's no going back." On the Galactic Council's flagship, chaos reigned. Ilara and her allies confronted Carax and his faction, demanding answers for their rogue actions. But it was too late. The die had been cast. The Council was split down the middle, unable to agree on a course of action. And so the war began in earnest, human tenacity pitted against alien technology. Daniel found himself on the front lines, his skills as a soldier put to the ultimate test. He fought side by side with warriors from around the globe, united in their determination to defend their home. They took losses, grievous losses, but they did not falter. For every city the aliens destroyed, the humans found a way to strike back. They adapted, innovated, drawing on the ingenuity that had brought them to the stars. In the midst of the fighting, Daniel clung to the hope that Ilara represented, the hope of understanding, of coexistence. He knew that if they could find a way to bridge the gap between their species, the bloodshed could end. But as the battles raged on and the bodies piled up, that hope seemed to grow more distant with each passing day. In the depths of the Pentagon, Daniel Cook pored over the data streaming in from the Ghostbuster sensors, his brow furrowed in concentration. The war with the Zorgon-led alien forces had reached a critical juncture, and humanity needed a breakthrough. As he analyzed the readings, a pattern emerged. The invisible ship's cloaking field seemed to fluctuate at regular intervals, almost like a heartbeat. Daniel cross-referenced the data with the Council's known technology and made a startling realization. Simmons leaned forward. "We could render their ships visible and vulnerable. Do we know where to find this ultranium?" Daniel nodded. "Our scans indicate a large deposit deep beneath the Pacific Ocean floor, but extracting it won't be easy." Simmons picked up the phone. "Assemble a team. I want our best soldiers, our top scientists. This is our chance to turn the tide." Within hours, Daniel found himself on a submarine, descending into the inky depths. His team, a mix of elite troops and brilliant researchers, checked their equipment with grim determination. As they neared the ultranium deposit, Daniel's comm crackled to life. It was Ilara. "Daniel, Carax is planning something big. He's amassing a huge fleet for an all-out assault on Earth. You must hurry." Dread settled in Daniel's gut, but he pushed it aside. They had a job to do. On the ocean floor, the team worked feverishly to extract the ultranium. But as they loaded the last of the mineral, alarms blared through the sub, alien signatures, closing fast. "Defensive positions!" Daniel roared, raising his pulse rifle. Invisible ships strafed the seafloor, energy beams boiling the water. The human soldiers fired back, their newly designed ultranium-tipped rounds piercing the alien hulls. Back on the surface, the news was grim. Carax's forces were on the move, invisible ships darkening the skies over every major city. The Battle of Earth had begun. In hastily assembled labs, scientists worked around the clock to weaponize the ultranium. They fashioned missiles and artillery shells, each one designed to disrupt the aliens' cloaking on impact. As the alien ships descended on the cities, the human coalition struck back. Ultranium-based weapons lit up the sky, stripping the invaders of their invisibility. The Ghostbuster sensors lit up, relaying targeting data to human forces around the globe. Artillery batteries and missile launchers roared to life, their ultranium payloads slamming into the exposed alien craft. Fighters scrambled to engage, now able to see their foe. Daniel found himself in the thick of the fighting, leading strike teams to take down key enemy ships. The battles were brutal and bloody, the advanced alien technology taking a heavy toll. But the humans fought with a ferocity born of desperation. They were fighting for their homes, their families, their very existence. They would not go quietly into the night. All around the world the story was the same. Humans and aliens locked in a titanic struggle, cities crumbling beneath the onslaught. Millions perished, soldiers and civilians alike. Yet even as the casualties mounted, the human coalition pressed on. They adapted, improvised, drawing on the ingenuity that had brought them from the caves to the stars. In the heart of the chaos, Daniel clung to the hope that Ilara represented. If they could just hold out, if they could bleed the Zorgons enough, maybe, just maybe, there was still a chance for peace. But as he looked out over the burning ruins of yet another city, Daniel knew that peace, if it came, would be bought with a price in blood. A price that Earth would be paying for generations to come. The Battle of Earth raged on, the fate of two civilizations hanging in the balance. And on the front lines, Daniel and his fellow humans fought and bled and died, knowing that retreat was not an option, for this was a fight not just for survival, but for the future itself. The Battle of Earth hung in the balance, the fate of billions in the hands of a few. But just as the tide seemed to turn in humanity's favor, a new horror emerged from the depths of space. Carax's visage filled every screen, every holofeed, his insectoid features twisted in malevolent glee. "Behold, the instrument of your destruction," he clicked, his mandibles twitching. "The doomsday vessel." The images shifted, revealing a ship of unimaginable scale. It dwarfed the mighty dreadnoughts of the human fleet, its hull pulsing with malignant energy. At its heart, a colossal cannon, its maw glowing with the sickly light of ultranium. In the command center, Daniel slammed his fist on the console. "Like hell we will," he growled. He turned to Ilara, her blue skin ashen. "We need a plan, and fast." They pored over the schematics of the doomsday vessel, searching for any weakness. "There," Ilara pointed, her finger tracing a conduit deep within the ship. "The ultranium core. If we can destabilize it—" "Then we can take the whole damn thing down," Daniel finished. "But how do we get inside?" A grim smile crossed Ilara's face. "Leave that to me." Within hours, a strike team assembled. Human and alien united in desperation. They boarded a cloaked shuttle, Ilara at the helm, and set course for the doomsday vessel. As they approached, the shuttle shimmered, its form shifting. To the sensors of the vessel, it appeared as just another Zorgon fighter, one among hundreds swarming its hull. They docked without challenge, the ruse holding. But as they emerged into the cavernous hangar, all hell broke loose. Plasma bolts seared the air as Carax's loyalists opened fire. The strike team dove for cover, returning fire with ultranium-tipped rounds. They fought their way across the deck, plasma scorching their armor, rounds sparking off the alien alloy. One by one, their team fell, buying their advance with blood. At last they reached the lift. Daniel slammed the control panel and the doors hissed shut, the chaos of battle fading. But as the lift descended into the bowels of the ship, a new threat emerged. Carax's elite guard, their chitin armor glinting in the sickly light. Daniel and Ilara fought side by side, a dance of death in the cramped confines of the lift. Plasma-seared flesh, blades carved chitin, and the deck grew slick with mingled blood. As the last guard fell, the lift shuddered to a halt. The doors opened, revealing a chamber pulsing with malevolent energy. At its heart, a seething mass of ultranium, the core of the doomsday cannon. And before it, Carax himself, his form twisted by hatred and madness. "You dare," he seethed, his voice a razor's edge. "You dare defy the will of the Council, the destiny of the Zorgon." They clashed in a fury of blades and fists, ultranium sword against plasma lance. Behind them, Ilara raced to the control panel, her fingers flying over the alien controls. Carax pressed his attack, his strength inhuman. Daniel met him, blow for blow, but he could feel himself tiring, his reflexes slowing. L/slash found its mark, searing across Daniel's chest. He staggered back, his armor smoking. Carax loomed over him, his lance raised for the killing blow. But in that moment, Ilara's cry rang out, "Now, Daniel!" Behind him, the ultranium core pulsed, the light within growing blinding. Ilara had done it. The core was destabilizing. They ran, racing for the lift as the chamber shook itself apart behind them. Alarms blared. the ship's systems screaming warnings. They burst into the hangar, sprinting for their shuttle. Around them, Carax's loyalists fled in panic, the realization of their impending doom hitting home. Daniel and Ilara threw themselves into the shuttle, slamming the hatch shut. Ilara's hands flew over the controls, the engines roaring to life. They shot out of the hangar, the doomsday vessel looming behind them. As they raced for the safety of the human fleet, the vessel shuddered, great gouts of plasma erupting from its hull. And then, in a blinding flash of light, it exploded, the shockwave buffeting their tiny craft. The war zone lit up like a sun, the silhouettes of the battling fleets stark against the glare. On the bridge of the human flagship, a cheer went up as the doomsday vessel vanished from the scanners. The tide had turned, the Zorgon's ultimate weapon destroyed. But for Daniel and Ilara, slumped in their seats as their shuttle limped back to the fleet, the taste of victory was bittersweet. They had struck a mighty blow, but the cost had been high. Friends, comrades, gone in the blink of an eye. The war was far from over, but for now they could breathe. They had bought Earth another day, another chance. With the doomsday vessel destroyed and Carax defeated, the Zorgon forces fell into chaos. Invisible ships fled Earth's orbit in droves, while others broadcast their surrender to the human coalition. On the flagship of the Galactic Council, Ilara stood tall, her blue skin glowing in the light of the holodisplays. She addressed the assembled council members, her voice ringing with authority. "The time for war is over," she declared. "We must establish a ceasefire and begin negotiations with the human leaders. Only through diplomacy can we hope to forge a lasting peace." The council members murmured their assent, their faces weary from the long conflict. But even as they began to discuss the terms of the ceasefire, an urgent message flashed across the holo displays. Ilara's eyes widened as she read the message. "A faction of Zorgon loyalists is launching an attack on Earth's cities," she said, her voice tight with tension. "They're using some kind of portal technology to transport troops and vehicles directly into urban centers." On the streets of New York, London, and Tokyo, chaos erupted as swirling vortexes of energy tore open in the fabric of reality. From these portals, Zorgon soldiers poured forth, their insectoid bodies encased in gleaming battle armor. Tanks and armored vehicles rumbled through the streets, their weapons spitting plasma fire at the scattered human defenders. Daniel Cook, leading a hastily assembled team of human and alien soldiers, charged into the fray. His pulse rifle barked as he fired at the advancing Zorgon troops, the air thick with the stench of ozone and burning metal. Around him, his team fought with grim determination, their weapons flashing in the smoke-filled air. Ilara was at his side, her own plasma rifle spitting death at the Zorgon attackers. "We need to push them back," Daniel shouted over the din of battle. "Protect the civilians and hold the line." Across the globe, the story was the same. Human and alien soldiers fought side by side, desperately trying to stem the tide of the Zorgon advance. In the skies above the embattled cities, human and alien fighters clashed in dizzying dogfights, the air thick with the contrails of missiles and the flare of energy weapons. But even as they fought, Daniel and his team realized that something was different about this attack. The Zorgon troops seemed to be moving with an uncanny coordination, their actions guided by some unseen hand. "They're being controlled," Ilara said, her eyes narrowing as she studied the tactical displays. "Some kind of AI is directing their movements, coordinating the attacks across multiple cities." Daniel nodded grimly. "Then that's our target," he said. "We need to find that AI and take it out. It's the only way to stop this invasion." As the battle raged on, Daniel and his team began to formulate a plan. They would infiltrate the Zorgon command center, fight their way to the heart of the AI's control system, and destroy it from within. It was a desperate gambit, but it was their only chance. The fate of Earth and the future of the galaxy hung in the balance. Under the cover of the ongoing battle, Daniel and his team slipped away from the front lines. They boarded a cloaked shuttle, Ilara at the helm, and rocketed towards the Zorgon command ship, hovering in low Earth orbit. As they approached the massive vessel, the shuttle's sensors lit up with warnings. "They've detected us," Ilara said, her hands flying over the controls. "Brace for evasive maneuvers." The shuttle jinked and weaved as Zorgon fighters streaked towards them, plasma bolts sizzling past the cockpit. Daniel and his team clung to their restraints, the G-forces slamming them against their seats. With a deft twist of the controls, Ilara sent the shuttle spiraling towards the command ship's hangar bay. The Zorgon fighters, unable to match the maneuver, overshot them, buying precious seconds. The shuttle skidded to a halt inside the hangar, the team already in motion. They leapt from the hatch, weapons at the ready, and charged towards the ship's interior. Zorgon guards boiled out to meet them, plasma rifles spitting fire. Daniel and his team dove for cover, returning fire with practiced precision. Ilara was a blur of motion, her plasma blade flashing as she carved through the Zorgon ranks. They fought their way through the ship, corridor by corridor, deck by deck. Zorgon soldiers fell before them, but more always took their place, the ship's AI sending reinforcements to block their advance. At last, they reached the command center. The doors slid open, revealing a cavernous chamber filled with pulsing Zorgon machinery. At its heart, a glowing column of energy pulsed and twisted, the AI core. The remaining Zorgon leaders stood before it, their weapons trained on the intruders. "Surrender," one of them clicked, its mandibles twitching. "You cannot hope to defeat us." Daniel and his team fanned out, their weapons leveled at the Zorgon leaders. "It's over," Daniel said, his voice hard. "Deactivate the AI and recall your forces from Earth, now." The Zorgons chittered in response, their stances defiant. "Never," the leader hissed. "We will fight to the last. The Zorgon will triumph." As the standoff stretched on, Daniel's eyes met those of Tala, the team's skilled hacker. An unspoken understanding passed between them. In a blur of motion, Tala lunged forward, a data spike clutched in her hand. The Zorgons fired, plasma bolts stitching the air, but Tala was already moving. She slammed the spike into the AI core, her fingers flying over the interface. The Zorgons charged, their blades flashing, but Daniel and the others met them head-on, buying Tala the precious seconds she needed. "Uploading virus now," Tala said through gritted teeth, her hands a blur. "Just a little longer." The AI core pulsed and shuddered, the light within it flickering. The Zorgons redoubled their attack, desperate to stop the sabotage, but it was too late. With a final defiant pulse, the AI core went dark. Across the globe, the space-time portals flickered and vanished, the Zorgon troops and vehicles caught mid-transition, winking out of existence. In the command center, the Zorgon leaders staggered, their connection to the AI severed. Daniel and his team seized the moment, stunning the disoriented Zorgons with well-placed shots. But even as they secured the command center, a cry of pain drew their attention. Tala slumped against the AI core, a Zorgon blade buried in her chest. Daniel rushed to her side, cradling her in his arms. "Tala, stay with me," he pleaded, his voice cracking. "We'll get you out of here, get you patched up." Tala smiled weakly, blood staining her lips. "It's okay, Daniel," she whispered. "I did what I had to do. The mission comes first." Her eyes fluttered closed, her final breath escaping in a soft sigh. Daniel bowed his head, tears streaming down his face. Around him, his team stood in silent vigil, their hearts heavy with the weight of Tala's sacrifice. But even in their grief, they knew that Tala's actions had saved countless lives. The Zorgon loyalists were defeated, their AI destroyed. The war, at long last, was over. As they emerged from the Zorgon command ship, the sky above them filled with the lights of human and alien ships. A cheer went up from the assembled fleet, a cry of victory and relief. Daniel looked up at the stars, his heart full of both sorrow and hope. The road ahead would be long and hard, the scars of the war not easily healed, but with the help of their new allies and the memory of those who had given their lives for peace, humanity would rebuild. A new era had begun, an era of cooperation and understanding between the stars. and Daniel knew that he and his team would be at the forefront of it all, working tirelessly to ensure that Tala's sacrifice and the sacrifices of so many others had not been in vain. With the Zorgon AI destroyed and the space-time portal sealed, the tide of the battle turned decisively in favor of the human-alien alliance. The remaining Zorgon loyalist forces, now scattered and disorganized, were quickly overwhelmed by the combined might of Earth's defenders and their new allies. In the war-torn streets of New York, Daniel Cook led a squad of human and alien soldiers in a final push against a pocket of Zorgon resistance. Pulse rifles barked, and plasma bolts sizzled through the air as the two sides clashed in brutal close-quarters combat. "Forward!" Daniel roared, firing his weapon at a charging Zorgon warrior. The alien's armor shattered under the hail of ultranium-tipped rounds, and it crumpled to the ground, twitching. Beside him, Ilara fought with graceful ferocity, her plasma blade carving through Zorgon chitin like paper. Her blue skin was spattered with alien blood, but her eyes burned with determination. Block by block, street by street, the human-alien forces advanced, driving the Zorgon loyalists back. Overhead, the skies thundered with the sound of fighter-craft dogfights, human and alien ships working in tandem to clear the airspace of enemy vessels. Finally, as the sun began to set on the shattered cityscape, the last of the Zorgon resistance was crushed. A cheer went up from the victorious soldiers, human and alien voices mingling in a cacophony of relief and triumph. In the days that followed, the Galactic Council and the Human Coalition worked tirelessly to forge a lasting peace. Diplomats and leaders from both sides met in a series of historic summits, hammering out the details of a treaty that would shape the future of the galaxy. Daniel found himself at the center of these negotiations, his role as a bridge between the two civilizations making him an invaluable asset. He worked closely with Ilara and other alien leaders, striving to find common ground and build trust where once there had been only fear and mistrust. The treaty they crafted was a marvel of interspecies cooperation, a document that promised a new era of peace and prosperity for all. It included provisions for the sharing of advanced technology, the establishment of trade routes between human and alien worlds, and the creation of a joint task force charged with maintaining security and stability across the galaxy. When the treaty was finally signed, in a grand ceremony attended by dignitaries from 100 worlds, Daniel felt a sense of profound hope and purpose. He knew that the road ahead would not be easy, that there would be challenges and setbacks, but he also knew that they had taken the first crucial steps towards a brighter future. As the galaxy began to rebuild, Daniel threw himself into his new role as the human representative to the Joint Task Force. Alongside Ilara and his alien colleagues, he worked to oversee the implementation of the treaty's key provisions, coordinating the exchange of technology and resources between human and alien worlds. But even as the wounds of the war began to heal, a new threat emerged from the depths of space. Reports began to filter in of attacks on remote human and alien colonies, raids carried out by a mysterious and technologically advanced species that seemed to strike with impunity before vanishing back into the void. The Joint Task Force scrambled to respond, dispatching ships and soldiers to investigate the attacks and protect vulnerable settlements. But each time they arrived, they found only destruction and death, the attackers long gone. As the attacks escalated, Daniel and Ilara worked feverishly to uncover the identity and motives of this new enemy. They pored over sensor logs and intelligence reports, searching for any clue that might lead them to their foe. What they found chilled them to the core. The attackers, it seemed, were a species known as the Cax, hailing from a region of space far beyond the borders of the known galaxy. Their technology was unlike anything the Galactic Council had ever seen, their ships and weapons far surpassing even the most advanced races. But even more troubling was the realization that the Cax had been watching the conflict between the humans and the Zorgon-led forces, studying their tactics and capabilities, and now, it seemed, they had deemed both species as potential threats to their own dominance. As the Joint Task Force raced to formulate a response, Daniel knew that they faced a challenge unlike any they had encountered before. The Kaks were a mystery, a cipher, and they seemed to hold all the cards. But he also knew that they had no choice but to stand and fight. The future of the galaxy, of all the hard-won peace and progress they had achieved, hung in the balance. And so, as the Kok ships began to mass on the edges of known space, Daniel steeled himself for the battles to come. The war may have ended, but the struggle for survival, it seemed, was just beginning. As the Kak's threat cast a shadow over the galaxy, Daniel, Cook and Ilara knew they had to act fast. They pored over the intelligence reports, their faces grim as they realized the true extent of the Kaks' power. "They have a weapon that can erase entire species from existence," Ilara said, her voice tight with tension. "We have to find out more, figure out a way to stop them before it's too late." Daniel nodded, his jaw set. "We need to get inside their command ship, gather intel on their technology and plans. It's the only way." They assembled a team of the best and brightest from both the Human Coalition and the Galactic Council races. Soldiers, scientists, hackers, each one hand-picked for their unique skills and unwavering courage. The infiltration of the Kek's command ship was a heart-pounding dance with death. Daniel and Ilara led the charge, their weapons blazing as they fought their way through the ship's defenses. The Kek soldiers were relentless, their weapons unlike anything the team had ever seen. But Daniel and his team pressed on, driven by the knowledge that the fate of the galaxy hung in the balance. They battled through the ship's corridors, leaving a trail of destruction in their wake. Finally, they reached the ship's central database. Ilara and the team's hackers got to work, their fingers flying over the alien interfaces as they searched for the information they needed. What they found chilled them to the bone. The Kaks' reality-altering weapon was even more powerful than they had feared. With it, the Kaks planned to reshape the galaxy, erasing any species that stood in their way. "They're going to start with us," Daniel said, his voice grim. "The humans and the Council races were the biggest threats to their dominance." Ilara's eyes flashed with determination. "Not if we stop them first." They devised a desperate plan, to steal the reality-altering weapon and turn it against the Kaks. It was a suicide mission, and they all knew it, but they also knew there was no other choice. The assault on the Kaks command ship was brutal and bloody. Daniel and Ilara fought side by side, their bond forged in the heat of battle. Around them, their team members fell one by one, sacrificing their lives to buy the others a chance. In the end, they succeeded in their mission. They captured the reality-altering weapon, ripping it from the heart of the Kaks ship. But the cost was immense. Daniel lay wounded, his blood pooling on the deck. Ilara knelt beside him, her face streaked with tears and gore. In her hands, she held the reality-altering weapon, its power thrumming through her veins. She knew what she had to do. With a scream of rage and grief, Ilara activated the weapon, pouring all her will into one final, desperate act. The Kaks vanished, erased from existence by the very weapon they had created. But the weapon's power was too great, too unpredictable. As the Kaks disappeared, so too did the memories of the war, of the sacrifices made by Daniel and Ilara's team. Across the galaxy, beings of every species blinked, their minds suddenly blank. The scars of the conflict faded, the ruins of the war erased, as if they had never been. Only Daniel, somehow spared by his unique physiology, remembered. He alone carried the weight of the truth, the knowledge of the price paid for the galaxy's salvation. As the galaxy moved on, unaware of how close it had come to annihilation, Daniel mourned. He mourned for his fallen comrades, for the brave souls who had given everything to protect the future. And he vowed to carry on their legacy, to safeguard the peace they had won, no matter the cost, for he alone knew the truth, that the galaxy's freedom had been bought with blood, and that it must never be taken for granted again. You have reached the end of the story. If you enjoyed this story and want to support us, please leave a like and subscribe to our channel, and for every comment that says 88, I will heart every single one of them. Thank you for your time.